Welcome back to another Unified Solution. In the series, we're talking to A1 candidate representatives for this federal election. Not just A1 independent supported candidates. We're talking to just about any independent who's keen to have a word. This time round, though, we're joined by Lindsay Temple. Now, Lindsay is an independent candidate based out of, just south of Mackay, and he's running for a Senate seat here in Queensland. Lindsay, you're my hope for a Senate seat. You've certainly got my vote. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on, Carl. Much appreciated. And live at Ilbilby, which is about 40 k's south of Serena, Carl. So that's
beautiful little part of the world. I was lucky enough to do a bit of driving last year, and headed up. Spent a lot of time driving between Brisbane and Mackay, and Brisbane and Townsville. Very, very beautiful part of the world. The first time I'd in fact driven further north than Yeppoon, and then I managed to do it 4 or 5 times a week. It was it was fun. Which leads me to you. You've got something I think going for you that most Labor politicians and Greens certainly don't. You've actually had quite a number of jobs. They haven't had one for the most part. So why don't you give us a bit of a history on where you've come from, Lindsay? I know you started out as a ringer many years ago.
Yeah, that's right. And that's when I grew up in the 60s, virtually. There was different times, a lot different times till now, but there wasn't a lot of trades in them days. They were limited trade. So if you mill managers, because there was a cane industry and limited trade, so the mill managers or such, their kids got the trades, or the farmers, because they own the mill. So that's the process at that time.
Sure.
But there wasn't a lot of trade, so I went ringing. And before that, my father worked on a lot of the properties out to Blackwater, right up to Mackay, droving cattle. So I've done that with station in Nebo, and so that's where I started in the cattle industry. Yeah. So, and then processed on to working on bridges. That's on the old timber bridges. So I become a bridge carpenter, which is dressing up all the girders and corbels on the inland highway to Marlborough. So that's where I sort of lived, and we lived on the job. And then got keen on a good-looking sort, and which is my wife today. So I started working in the cane industry, and we got married, and then moved on to exploration, which drilled out exploration on all the Utah leases, which went from all of Moranbah, Gunyalla Peak down, all the way to Peak Down, Saraji, Norwich, and then Blackwater. So I worked in that area with Australian Consolidated Exploration, and then eventually moved on to starting at Gunyalla Mine as a heavy serviceman, all the heavy gear, and moved on to that. Left there after quite a bit of time, and then pretty well sort of worked for myself. So I had prime movers. Just doing general freight, and we used to do hay as well, a bit of hay, moving hay. And 1 year I done grain all the way to New South Wales. And the next thing, small business, we used to employ up to about 6 people, put 2 kids through that on trades, one in the office and a son on the tools. And then after about 5 years, we sold our share in that business. And then on that process, my wife, I become a full carer for my wife, and I work part time for a mining company 7 days a month. So I've still got to get my bread and crumbs, so to speak. So
sure.
And like to add this job
with that sort of a history.
Sorry.
With that sort of a history, you've got a really deep understanding of both the major industries for Queensland, beef and whatever's coming out of the ground. You obviously got a great affinity with the land too, given that you've spent a fair bit of time building the bridges that have actually connected the state. So you understand the distances involved and the challenges, I suspect, that the rural people of the state are facing.
Yeah, logistics is a big thing for Queensland. So you're right. Logistics is huge. So, I have a good broad understanding of industries and services, and what needs upgrading to make it more productive. And saying that, I have quite a few brother-in-laws actually in the cane industry. I have son-in-laws in the cattle industry, and I even had one time a daughter managed a station at Nebo, there 40,000 acres for one of the leading pastoral companies in Australia, and she was the first lady at 23 to become a manager in over 100 years, and that was Angel Temple, but she's married now. So, but it's carried on. So.
The industry is facing, well, all those industries, beef and coal, are facing serious challenges at the moment. The Greens obviously would like to see coal shut down, and I'm not completely sure that the Labor Greens partnership don't want to see beef exports and beef shut down. In fact, recently I've seen some articles about how the Chinese are developing vegan meat, so meat that isn't meat. Looks like meat, but it isn't meat. So this must be concerning for the farmers that you're dealing with in Queensland.
Yeah, it is. It is. There's no doubt about that. The cattle industry, they going back in time, they wanted to put a $30 virtually tax on cattle before the methane gas under these regulations, but they didn't bother. But they were conditioning. They were getting us ready for the next lot, which I have heard. I have to check to see if it's incorporated in this emission trading scheme to back to zero. Now, I believe the cattle are in that again, and it may cost up to $250 per beast added on to the cost. So they don't want us. Virtually, that tells me they don't want us to eat beef. So,
well, there's also an argument saying, with all this flooding that's going on throughout Queensland, northern New South Wales, they're trying to make the ground pretty much untenable for farmers to live on. And if the farmers can't live on it, if they can't make money off the stock on it, if they can't grow anything out of it, then there goes the methane problem. They'll just tell the farmers to shoot all the cattle and move into one of those smart cities that they're thinking about trying to build. It leads me on to probably one of the biggest problems facing Queensland at the moment, and that is the accommodation shortage. Now, you're in the Mackay area, so what are people saying? And you're in Townsville at the moment. You're facing exactly the same challenges, I imagine, with rental accommodation and rents skyrocketing prices as we are in the southeast corner of Queensland.
So for reference to that, Carl, Mackay is exactly like that. There's a shortage of accommodation in Mackay. I have a son-in-law that was helping out a family. They were living in the back shed with closed-in walls with tarps to give them something where to stay. That's my son-in-law personally in Mackay. So yeah, there is a crisis point out there, and so I now I couldn't answer that directly for Townsville, but in my own backyard, if it's like that in Mackay, it'll be the same in Townsville, and it's a question I can ask at Ken, but definitely it is like that in Mackay.
So what can we do? What can you do as a Queensland senator? And let's hope there is more independent voices and more A1 voices of the 10 that are putting their names up. Let's hope they all get in. But what will you be trying to do to help Queenslanders who are homeless and struggling at this point in time? How do you see a way out of this? Has it got anything to do with, maybe readjusting laws on how many tiny homes farmers can have on their land? If they can't put a cow on there, maybe they can put a couple of tiny homes.
That's right. There's a few problems involved. It's sometimes councils, going back in time, they haven't released land or quick enough. Or the land is controlled by the certain developers that won't release it to hold the price up. So I think that's a problem there. Going back in time, if you had a family member, you could give them a house block on your land. If it was 10 acres, you could actually give one of your kids a place to cut off and build a house. now the councils have stopped that as well. So that's
sure.
some of the trouble, and the other problem is the cost. The cost of the land is too dear to buy, and the cost of materials going through the roof. And the average house now is getting around 5,600,000, and even dearer in Mackay. So it takes two families to pay a house off. So if the interest rates spike, a lot of these guys are going to be camping out on the road. They won't be able to retain these houses. So the first thing is there's no shortage of land in Australia, but no. all the policies for councils want us to live in chicken coops virtually in cities. They won't let us. They won't let us spread out. So the councils have. This is a big problem with councils, but we can do something with the taxation rates of states. So because it costs a lot more to run a city, maybe on one of our policies is if you live in a city, it's a flat rate of 20%. If you move to the country, it's a flat rate of 10%. So that encourages people to move out into the country. So that's a state issue. Now at a federal issue, we have to look at getting rid of all taxes and bringing in a consumer tax at 2%. That allows money to go directly to the people, and they get to spend it in their community. That supports the community that they live in. Instead of the money goes to Canberra or to Brisbane, we've got to take it back off them and put it back to the people. They spend it in their area, creates jobs, creates more businesses, and then the money flows upwards to the government, not the other way around.
Yeah, I think that's a very sensible program.
Wrong.
Yeah. This gives the power back to the people to create infrastructure in their own area. If you're spending in your area, if you've got tourists who are spending in your area, then that money stays in your area, literally. I've got a bit of a problem with government waste at the moment, Lindsay, and I'm sure that you've come across this in your time. A friend of mine recently alerted me to the fact that the regional city in Victoria that he lives in is getting a brand new basketball stadium. Now, the cost of that brand new basketball stadium is $59 million.
Wow.
Now, forgive me, but last time I checked, a basketball stadium, even if you had 8 or 10 or 15 courts, is a big shed with 4 walls, tin walls at that usually. But let's say you're going to build it out of brick. Let's say it's a warm area, so put some air conditioning into it. You need toilet block, you need change facilities, you need a cafe and somewhere for people to sit, maybe some stands to watch the big games, some lights so that you're not playing in the dark. $59 million for a shed with some lights, some toilets, a cafe, and some courts with hoops at each end. Now, I got to say, it is beyond me how that gets passed. I've been thinking, as many do for a long time, if it's government money, and you're quoting on that job, you add an extra zero. How do we stop that? And is that something that the independents would fight for, or at least try and gain oversight of?
It's definitely got to be stopped. It just doesn't add up at all. So it's we'd have to look at collusion, corruption, all of them things. But it goes back. This has been some guys have run it past me in humour. It's like a guy puts in for a council puts in a tender out to do a job, and just keep this in mind. This is just along the joke side, but I don't think it's any longer any humour. But he puts a tender out. A bloke from somewhere else puts a tender in for 3 times the price. The local bloke puts in the price which is reasonable. And then the bloke that's doing the tendering, he gets confused and asks the bloke that put the dearest price, how come you're so dear? And he says, it's quite easy. I get a third, you get a third, and we give the local bloke the job. So it points to corruption. And to stop it,
absolutely.
Well, well, maybe we should start putting some rules into our constitution. Does it fit into the best practice of looking after Australia in the long term, or do we start locking them up? So I guess maybe we have to put into corruption at that level. If they're found guilty, they actually lose all their assets, and that returns to the people. Maybe something we have to look like that. So the punishment is very high. So if it's corporations involved and they get caught out, they lose everything. We take it all off them. It's because it's corruption.
Absolutely.
So
and it comes back to the sovereign fund.
That's it. So if you steal a car, Carl, to me, that goes down the road and we find it, we get it and we return it to the original owners. That's how it works. So if there's graft and corruption involved, that means they've stolen. And if it's proven stolen through a proper court system, and it's done wrongly, we take it all off them. And that would probably scare them. So I'd be looking at something along them lines. So
you've mentioned criminality. It would be remiss of me, particularly in the regions north of where you live. Crime at the moment up that neck of the woods through Townsville and Cairns is pretty rife. Obviously, things at a state level are not working out well, and I understand that this is a Queensland Senate seat. There's not a great deal that you can do, but what's it like living it at the moment where you are? I mean, I'm told that crime is quite rife, particularly car theft and petty theft.
And we're talking Townsville, Carl, in Townsville or Mackay?
Sort of Mackay, Bowen, Townsville, yeah.
Well, there's certainly a lot of crime with stolen cars, but we also got to look back a little bit, leading up to the shutting down of, to do with COVID. We've shut a lot of our businesses down, or pushed a lot of our small businesses out the back door here, and now the unemployment has to play a part because we shut small businesses down through this crisis. So we have to probably look at the effects of the COVID, the whole mess to do with COVID, the shutting down of industries, and then the segregation of both sides of the argument. So this hasn't helped, I don't think, with crime. But to add with crime, also there's a lot of theft, and now it gets mentioned to me. There's a lot of drugs coming into Townsville, and there's a lot of drugs coming into Mackay. So we have to then get into some of our law enforcement and maybe ask them some questions. How come you can find so-and-so anywhere in Australia, but you can't find the source of these drugs coming into the...
Oh, and we seem to have had Lindsay drop out. Or maybe that's something going on in the Townsville area today. He's going to try and reconnect. We'll see if we can get him back on. Yep, here we go. I'll add him back in and see if we can keep going.
Thanks.
There you go, mate. Carl, you're all back. You dropped out there for a sec.
Carl, we have to apply pressure to our police commissioners, and to touch on that, we need to segregate all our police commissioners, all our judges from the likes of a state a leader that she picks them and puts them in place herself. So there's no separation of powers in any of these places. So it's like a boys' club or a girls' club, and I believe that the separation should not belong to the leader of a state. So we have to break down and put barriers.
Yep. Absolutely. So you've mentioned the dreaded C word a couple of times. There has been obviously a lot of pain experienced by people at a personal level. This has split up families, it's split up marriages, it's split up business partnerships, it's closed businesses, as you've said, small businesses through to, well, reasonably large ones. Those that have been prepared to submit to the word mandate have been able to fight on regardless. Clearly, mandate doesn't mean compulsory.
No.
Come a time, people are going to want to a reckoning for the decisions that have been made on our behalf for our
Yeah.
health.
Yeah.
Will you stand with Ricardo with the things that are going to have to be done, investigated, and those people responsible brought before the people?
Yeah. Yeah, certainly will. So just a little bit of background there. In my family, I've had two daughters that been forced or coerced. One's in the medical side, looking after old people, and then I have a daughter that was pressured. No vax, no job, subcontracting, and I don't mind throwing some of these names up, and that's a BMA company. So no vax, no job. So to me, they've coerced or forced, and in our constitution that is illegal. So I'll just cut straight to the chase. I got skin in this game. To me, we'll be putting them through. We'll be after them, putting them through a court system, and we'll be locking the bastards up. That's my take
Yes,
on this whole mess. This is personal.
unfortunately, a lot of big business has a lot to answer for, and you mentioned one of the big coal companies, but quite a lot of them have the same thing. They feel, for whatever reason, that they're protected by the government saying, well, I don't know what all the government has said is, oh, we don't force anybody to get injected. They don't. The bureaucrats have introduced this mandate word,
That's right.
and somehow or other, people have forgotten that mandate means you have to give your consent to give it any
That's right.
power. It is not compulsory. And if big business, like BMA, turned around to the government and said, well, we're not going to enforce that for you,
That's right.
they would be in the clear. But because they have stood and enforced that policy, an illegal policy that the government has no culpability in because they washed their hands of this right from the word go.
Yeah.
What bureaucrat are you going to take to court to say, well, you made us do this? Well, no, they said this is a mandate. Now, if your
Yeah.
CEO at your company didn't understand what the word mandate meant, then that's a problem for your company because everybody that you mandated to get vaccinated in your business can sue your ass off.
Yeah.
And I think will if you coerce them in any way. So that's a minefield that we're yet to steer through. And I'm glad that, we're going to have people who've run businesses like yourselves rather than these numbnuts who are
Yeah.
professional students turned into professional political activists, turned into professional political, well, suckholes for the want of a better term, before
Yeah.
being granted or anointed a seat, to rise to the pinnacle of the graft and corruption. They've really got to have laid some groundwork. So, and they do that. You see them on the media every day doing it.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to see that there's people like you standing up, mate, for people like me and the rest of us who just want somebody to look after us, to give us a voice in that parliament.
Yeah. And to give your sovereignty back. They're trying to steal your sovereignty, the whole sovereignty of Australia. That they think they own us,
Absolutely.
and if we don't stand up
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and kick back, this is not finished. So
Oh, it's
we're
not
going
finished by
into
a
an
long
election.
way.
So sorry, Carl, I jumped in there. We're going
No,
into
no,
an
it's not
election,
Yep.
and it's we're going into an election that's the most important election you're going to ever see, and I'm fighting for your lives. I am actually fighting
Yep.
for your lives out there in Australia. It's that serious.
So, you're getting out and meeting the people of Queensland. You have to get out and meet them. It's a bloody big state. So you're heading north. You're in Townsville at the moment. You've had a really successful day in Townsville, been getting around on a bus, and you're about to take the 4.5 hour trip north to Cairns, overnighting in Cairns and then getting out and about tomorrow. Please let us know where you're going to be tomorrow. I know you're still setting things up there. I've got certainly we've got a number of people from that area, part of the groups that watch these. So they'd love to catch up and wish you well. I'm sure show their support for what you're trying to do for us in this election. And then you're coming south after that.
Yes.
So back down through potentially Ingham and then Rockhampton, Bundy, 1770, down to Gympie. So people will be able to see you.
Yep, that's right, Carl. And I've been also just like to mention, Carl, that I was talking to Peter Rogers, independent senator. He's running as well in this election, and I just wanted to put it out there. He's on the thoughts as me. We've been working together in regards to what's going on in Australia, and he is fighting also for the best interest of Australia. So I give him for me and him working together, I give him a number 2, just so you know. Yeah.
Great.
So,
Okay. And he'll be reciprocating with you. He'll
he
help
will
you
be.
out with preferences too.
Yes, that's right. Reciprocal. That's right, Carl. So Peter Rogers is reciprocal.
So the big message for people in Queensland is to put the sitting senators last, and put the independents first. Put the majors last, and always put the independents first.
That's right. That's we need to do that, especially this time around, because we don't get a second go, Australia. This is we're fighting for our lives in this country. It's Australia against the world. It's that serious.
Once again, it is. It couldn't be more serious. People may not be awake to the whole idea yet, but trust me, you get enough independent voices in that place in Canberra, and you will learn the truth. And we have to learn the truth. Otherwise, we're going to remain slaves for the rest of our days. Vince, stay safe on the road as you were traveling around Queensland in this quest. I wish you all the best. You've got my vote for Senator, and I look forward to hearing more about the campaign as it nears to a close. I'll try and talk to you again before the media blackout takes place, and I hope it all goes well.
Thank you so much, and Australia, I am trying to save you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Carl.